Despite only being 20 years old, The Devil Wears Prada can't help but feel like a real period piece, with it having been made at perhaps the tail end of the Sex and the City era, where journalism could be presented as this impossibly glamorous, high-paying industry which would offer entrée into a rarefied New York high society that now is far more sealed off than it ever was before. It predated the Great Recession, the pandemic, and AI. Three things that have decimated the industry, leaving magazines that were once giants floundering as the world moved on from them. The Devil Wears Prada 2 could have pretended that none of this happened and simply worked as a piece of escapist fluff, but to its credit, it confronts the fact that the world has changed and that a magazine, such as the one depicted in these films, Runway, is no longer an untouchable behemoth, no matter who runs them. While still fun and frothy, there's more meat on the bone than expected in this highly anticipated sequel, which sees director David Frankel and writer Aline Brosh McKenna returning in solid form. So 20 years later, Andy, once again played by Anne Hathaway, having been downsized from her job in hard journalism, returns to Runway as his new features editor, putting her into conflict with her old boss Miranda, once again played by Meryl Streep. So in the sequel, Streep's Miranda Priestley is still iconic and still mean, but she's shown to be slipping with her continued tenure at Runway only assured by the continued patronage of the magazine's owner, Irv. She can no longer afford to be as casually cruel to her staff as she once was, with her new assistant, Simone Ashley Zamari, more of a minder to make sure that she doesn't get into too much trouble. However, when Runway wants a fawning write-up of a company that operates sweatshops, Miranda's on the verge of being cancelled. So Andy, who goes viral for a public screed against the billionaires who just scrapped the newspaper she works at, gets a call. Now, lest you think that Devil Wears Prada 2 is too self-serious, don't fret. It still has a cavalcade of fashion along with a long trip to Milan, but it does show that the rich lives they are leading are only possible thanks to the largesse of whomever owns them, and who can also scrap them on a whim. This mirrors what's happening amongst many huge, formerly untouchable pieces of legacy media. I mean, just look at Vanity Fair or Rolling Stone, or heck, Hollywood. Look at Warner Brothers. They still exist, but they are not what they once were. Hathaway's Andy is once again an easy-to-like protagonist as she gets seduced by the perks of the job, such as the clothes and the trips, but she's less of a pushover for Miranda, who isn't the giant she once was. Emily Blunt's character also returns, with her now a senior exec at Dior, who's dating a Jeff Bezos-styled billionaire, played by Justin Theroux. Of everyone, the one who perhaps shines the brightest is Stanley Tucci, who returns to the sharp-tongued but kindly Nigel, cycling through perhaps the highest-end fashion you'll see on a man outside of a James Bond movie. Some cast members are wasted, though, with Kenneth Branagh in particular having very little more than a few walk-on scenes as Miranda's supportive husband. One wonders why he took on the role. Well, I'm sure the paycheck was good, but otherwise. Hathaway also gets a romantic interest in Patrick Bromwell's good-natured Australian contractor, but the relationship is given comparatively little screen time, perhaps in response to the fact that people hated Andy's boyfriend's character so much in the first film. Visually, The Devil Wears Prada 2 is well lensed by Florian Ballhaus, who also shot the first movie, but I must admit that the difference between digital photography in this one and the warm 35mm shooting in the first is striking, and has been noted quite a bit on social media. I definitely prefer the latter, but such is no doubt a sign of the times. Overall, I was surprised by how much I enjoyed The Devil Wears Prada 2, as I actually was not really much of a fan of the first film. It delivers the fans what they want, but it also has some brains behind it, with knowing nods at how high-end fashion, once attainable by the population, is now little more than a status symbol for the elites. The film still celebrates the escapisms and excesses of such a life, but it also acknowledges how fleeting it all is, even for those who seem to have made it in an industry that is on its last legs. And I give it an entertaining 7 out of 10.
You were born for the runway.
Thank you for clicking on our video, everybody. If you like what you saw here, please make sure you like the video and subscribe and share with your friends who like this sort of content. JoBlo remains an independent company, and we appreciate all of your support.